Yeah, I think really what we probably should say to start with is that of the purpose why we're here. So what we're trying to do as an advisory council is to pick up all of the information that's available. The information that's available to pretty much everyone is the same information as we can get, and then to try and distill that down and work out what's behind the headlines. So we won't really have any additional information about neurons specifically or other things to. We don't have any more information than anybody else, but what we're trying to do is just make sure when we see those headlines of, say, 70% slowdown in progression for copper ATSM, for example, then we put together a statement that goes out that all of the Alliance members can use to give you some sort of backup to talk to your people in your countries to say this is actually what the media report actually means, or this is what the data is from that trial. So I wouldn't have any specific additional details about Neuron itself to say how effective it is or not at this point. We're all still waiting for the results, obviously. And I think also a lot of the companies are not actually allowed to talk about efficacy in trials until they're finished. So I'm not sure we will get an exact answer to that question right now. There's obviously some great talks coming up in the symposium, which are going to release some information this week. So I think that's a fair assessment, would you say, of our role?
I think it's important that you, I mean, people are going to overinterpret the data they see, or they'll read things on social media. I think as a society or as an organisation who's representing sort of patients and also just ALS research, I think, you have to put that information up and explain to people how the clinical trial system works. It's really important, really basic information, so people realise that phase 2 or early phase 2 trials are really just to still work out dosage and safety, and they're not powered to give you a result on efficacy, and therefore people have to, I know it's very difficult to calm people's excitement down, but you have to say we have to wait for the data. And if you can put information up on your website to explain the clinical trial process, if you can try and explain statistics in a simple way, it's not always how to interpret data, then I think that helps. And just have that constant message going out from all the organisations, wait for the results of the trial. We can't say anything until there's hard data out there.
And I would just say that I think obviously it's very hard because, and actually Mary Kay Turner from Brainstorm was here and said yesterday again, for the company they're waiting to get the results just as we all are, and we don't know what the results are. But for people who are in the trial or who are on a right to try situation, there may be messaging that goes out that says it's working. But this is also not the first time in ALS that we've seen things where it's not yet known, but people want to believe that it's working, and it could be, and we hope it is. And I think everyone needs to remain cautiously optimistic, but everyone has to wait until we know, because we just don't know yet. But the data to date is published. That they have, and it seems safe, and we just need to find out if it works. And the trial's fully recruited, and the press release, I believe, said next October they expect to have the results, and that's a hard thing to message, but I think we all have to stay strong until then to find out. Mary.
Down the front. Looks like it's me now, I'll stand up. You just made the comment that phase 1 and phase 2 trials are not about success of the drug. Yet every time we read reports of phase 1, there's always a comment about, and this has changed the course of the disease in these people. And phase 2, this looks like it's got an effect, and there's a measure, which raises false hopes. And it raises hopes and expectations that aren't supported by the data that's collected to date. What can we be doing to convince the researchers and the drug companies to actually only say what they've found and not what they'd like to sell us?
Great question.
That's a great question. It's obviously a really common and strong issue because the pressures on the researchers to get funding, to show that they've got data, the companies, etc., to keep maybe the shareholders happy. Could be a controversial comment. I think the thing that what we need to do really is, as a community, is to show the cost that causes, because the amount of time and energy that we have to put into putting out those fires and all that enthusiasm and excitement is really distracting from all the real hard work that everybody else is trying to do. And also, if it means that our supporters want to direct funding to one particular project because they've read that this is the best thing since sliced bread, then that also undercuts all of that foundation of all the other research that's going on. So it is a really massive problem. So I'm open to any ideas to say, how can we stop that happening? But as a community, I think we need to try and put that message out that actually this is a massive waste of time. And we're all putting a huge amount of effort into trying to calm that down.
And the SEC has put out comments, right? We did that for Copper ATCM, we did that for Brainstorm, about the whole context of this being experimental therapy. I do think that the Alliance can come up with guidelines or things to do and things not to do, but the ultimate responsibility is at the company's feet, and they need to be careful and rigorous in how they are a priori mentioning what they'll look at in a trial, and then after the trial actually reporting on that. So I think we can sit up here and come up with these guidelines, and David does a good job kind of putting this together, but I think the companies have that responsibility as well.
Yeah, one of the good things would be to build relationships with companies, which is something that happens in this meeting and in symposium as well. So if we've got a good open dialogue with them, then at least we've got some kind of advantage to say, hey, let's just see where we're at with this and not go overboard too early. So some companies do that better than others, but let's hope they can take that on board.
So if I could just address some of the issues around Neurone. So we're doing our very best to communicate as accurate information and to, squelch some of the information out there that isn't true. If you go on our website, we have a number of press releases. In February of last year, we issued a very thorough press release that talked about that the trial was double-blind, placebo-controlled. Nobody knows who's in Neurone, and nobody knows who's on placebo. It doesn't matter what people are saying on Facebook, et cetera. I've personally tried to talk to some of those patients once they finish the trial and say, I don't think you're helping the scientific process because you don't know what group you were in, you don't know if you got a response, and some of those stories grow larger and larger. As we know, we've tried, there's not a lot that we can do about that. We respond to every single email. We send them the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act in the United States and educate on how a drug is approved. We're really trying. So if you have any other ideas, we're open for that because we don't want all this noise out there, and we're certainly not contributing to the noise. We're trying to keep it quiet because the study is a well-designed study, and we'll have our data at the end of 2020, and then we'll have our answer. And so we're working very hard to do that. So I hope that you all feel that, and we're obviously open for additional feedback. And if you all have, I'll give you my business card, and if you all have specific patients, I worked with one of the Italian groups because we had a patient in Italy who claimed that they were getting Neurone. And it got all over the media. And I went to the media and said, the patient is not getting Neurone. I went to the patient and said, you're not getting Neurone, I'm sorry. My heart goes out to you. So we're really trying to address each one of those issues. It's a huge job to do. But anyway, so I want you to know that that's the company stance and that's what we're doing. And I'm willing to work with any of you to help you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Much appreciated. And obviously, I think I'd just like to reiterate that it's understandable that people get excited because we really need and are looking for a treatment. So it's we're not blaming anybody for getting overexcited about that as well. So thanks.
Yeah, and I think Nick had made a great point earlier. I think ideally, if there were a way to have promising therapies that nobody knows a whole lot about until we start to find out whether they actually work. And I know that that goes against how industry needs to work at some level. They need to have press releases. They need to do these things. But however calm it can be kept early on when we don't know will prevent people from picking and choosing winners when the scientific community can't do that. We have no clue what works and what doesn't, and that's why the process is the way it is, and that's why phase 3s have to go through phase 3 processes. And so whatever we can do as an alliance or a community to start to try to hold everyone to a level of balance in the way things are messaged, it will get things will be much better, I think, if that can happen.
Let me start by saying how happy I am that you sit here, and it's for the new people. It's not. Don't take it for granted that we have this committee. I was one of the members that expressed the need for this committee a few years ago, and I feel much safe now towards my community that I have a committee that I can address with questions. Since we are a small organization, we don't have a built-in research people to ask, and David knows I approach him on a personal level, but now that the committee is here, I think it's a huge step for the Alliance, so thank you for doing that. And what I've been taking from your talks in the previous years, David, is what can I bring back to my community about what can we expect in 2020 as Brainstorm, of course, I'm very familiar with and know exactly what to look for, but are there any more phase 3 that about to publish any results in the next year, or any exciting stuff or optimistic stuff that I can take back and publish to our local community?
Actually, this would be, I was wondering, that might be a good opportunity because we're down to already 10 minutes, I think, or whatever. Did you want to maybe, we could just go down and each kind of talk about 1 or 2 or 3 things that we're kind of excited about where we're at? And
sure. Sure. I mean, I would say that the number of trials that are ongoing at the moment is very exciting. I mean, in the UK, we've got 6 on the go at the moment. For example, the antisense oligos are all very exciting. The SOD1 antisense, we should get some more data from that very soon. Again, there's lots of positive talk about that. Clearly, that will only be beneficial to a small percentage of people, but it does set out the road and the path that this technology is available, and there's other research projects that are looking into basic research of using antisense oligos for master regulators to try and treat sporadic cases, etc. So there is a real sense of optimism, and I think that technology is a huge revolution that we don't want to get too excited about, but we think, you know, we'll have something very positive. So hopefully by the end of the week we may get some more information about that from the SOD1 trial. So personally, I'm excited about the technology side of things.
So flying the Australian flag, I'd say the copper ATSM is pretty exciting, and they're recruiting into the trial in Australia at the moment. I think that will finish next year as well. And again, they're recruiting into the another antiretroviral trial as well, to phase 3 of that. So both those trials had promising phase 2 data, and we're excited to see where they end up. So that would be what's exciting me at the moment.
So I think what you can take back to the community is that the pipeline is robust. There are multiple targets, you know, between Orphazyme and Biogen and Cytokinetics, you know, various different targets, various different modalities to go after, siRNAs, there's small molecule approaches. So the pipeline is robust, and I think that's what you take back. What I'm excited about is an opportunity now that the phase 2 platform trial has launched or will launch. And I think it gives an opportunity for all the organizations to think about how we can help that process. And I know one of the things that I've been thinking about is you know, as more and more candidates are going in to apply for this phase 2, to be part of the phase 2 platform trial, they're going to need safety and tox packages. And, you know, one of the things we could do is launch a program around safety and tox, which is not cheap for companies, and where we can provide funding for them so that if, you know, we can do 10 compounds a year, hopefully 2 or 3 of those can have successful packages that they can then go into to platform trial and apply.
Kuldip, I think it
So-
might be helpful. I don't think many people know what the platform trial is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's okay.
Okay, sorry about that. So you all may have heard about this. This is the, or not, and this is the phase 2 platform trial. So I think maybe step back a little bit. A platform. One of the issues we have in neuroscience drug testing is that it takes a long time for you to see an effect, and so these trials are generally a year or 2 long. You have to sort of follow the patients for that long so that you can see the drop and then see if the drug is having an effect. Because it's such a heterogeneous disease, your patient population, generally you have a, you know, Brainstorm has 200 patients in their phase 3. So that takes time to recruit, to get all of those people in, to do the studies at various sites. And so CNS trials are very expensive and time-consuming. And a platform trial allows you to essentially circumvent that process a little bit by having 4 or 5 compounds, and you have 1 placebo group. And so you are, instead of having a placebo group for every trial, you basically have 4 or 5 therapeutic treatments and then 1 placebo that can be compared for each of those treatments. And what it does, and if you do it in that way and you have a central IRB and you have all the sites, operationally you can make it so that it's faster and cheaper to get that trial in and done. And so that's the platform trial. So, thank you, Kalanit, for letting me know. So that has launched already. You may have seen press releases on this. And so this is what I was talking about, that from what I understand from Merit, who's running the study, that there'll be an opportunity for companies to go in every year or 2 years and apply so that they can be pulled into this platform trial. And we have to then start thinking about it in this room in a more creative way as to how we can help that process, right? It's happening. So we have to kind of make it so that it's easier for the companies at the front end to get funding so that they're ready for those packages to go into the platform trial. So.
Yeah, can I just add a little something to that? So there's the US Healy Center platform system, and now in Europe, TriCals is being set up to do platform trials as well. So the kind of analogy we use for that is you build all that infrastructure to run a trial, and you unpack it all and start again, and it's very inefficient. So it's a bit like building the ice hotel every year is the analogy we use. So the TriCals trial is going to do the Triumec, the lithium, and the oral Daravone, so all at the same time with a placebo as well. So it's happening across the world, which is great, really good.
Yeah, it's really going to speed up the efficiency of what looks good and should move on to phase 3s or potentially work and what won't. So I guess I would expand on that and say that the pipeline is full from the potential of phase 3 all the way back to discovery. I think it's very exciting. In phase 3, you're going to learn about Brainstorm next year. Cytokinetics has phase 2 data that was released in 2019 that we'll see if that can go through to phase 3 as well. That has some promise. Orphazyme is fully recruited and moving through with that. As Nick said, antisense oligonucleotides, we're probably going to learn in 2020 what's happening with the SOD1. It looks very exciting because it has certain targets to show that it's hitting the right target. That makes it unique in that it has specific biomarkers attached to the trial, which we haven't really had a lot yet in ALS, and that is sort of the way things are moving. The C9orf72 is moving forward as well in a number of capacities from phase 1 through to, well, right now in phase 1, but looking to see how that will work with not just Biogen with the ASO, but other companies that are looking to do that. And as also Nick said, there are sporadic targets that are going to be used with these ASOs as well. So there is an ibutalas that will be presented this week as well, a phase 3 that's going to start. So a number of things that are right at that end point where we're going to start to see in a number of other phase 2s, as well as some things in phase 1 that are quite interesting that relate to the research that we've started to see come through in the past 5 years. So we'll see how nucleocytoplasmic transport, the start of testing those things, will work for phase 1, whether or not it's safe and whether that'll move forward. RIPK1 inhibitors is another example of something, and it can certainly send you examples of some of these that are interesting in the trial space. I think if you move back a step, I think in 2019 we made some good progress in ALS in terms of targets. For potential treatment that could be the next set of clinical trials that come out. So the most prominent genetic cause of ALS is called C9orf72. And there have been a lot of preclinical studies this year that have shown promising potential treatment ways in which we can target that type of pathology. And what's cool about that is that there's also one of the most prominent other pieces of pathology called TDP43, which is related to this C9orf72. So as we develop treatments for the one, some of those may be applicable to a wider audience of people with ALS who don't have specifically C9orf72 mutations, which is the most prominent one. There's also advancements in terms of our understanding of this TDP43, which is abnormal in 97% of the cases in ALS. So I think there's some really cool things on the horizon that will be that next step of phase 1 trials. And again, like Kuldip said as well, we need to help support getting those into mechanisms that will be trying these out. Platform trials and TRICALs, and in the US, will be valuable in trying to speed up that process and getting that done quicker to see what are the winners and what are the losers without spending years building up the ice house, the ice hotel, and tearing it back down. Yeah. And then if we step back one, I think it's also really exciting that we're starting to see all the discoveries of the past 7 or 8 years coalescing in a lot of ways. I think I've talked before about how one of the big advancements in the past 20 years in ALS is that we've discovered a lot of genetic causes of the disease. And that allows us to make a mouse or a fish or a worm that helps us to understand in the laboratory what's happening. But I think we're starting to see those close in on each other. Even more so that we're seeing, just a paper a few months ago showed that a whole group of those pathologies that we knew were happening at one end of a motor neuron and another end, we're finding one of them has to do with how it transports from that end to the other. So it's starting to all coalesce and merge, and I think that that's going to give us a good opportunity to have some very strong treatments for sporadic ALS. So I think it's a true pipeline of discovery in 2019 through to therapeutic targets in the laboratory that are set to go into clinical trials, and some very interesting phase 1 trials all the way through to some phase 3s in 2019, 2020 that we're going to get some answers on that have some promise. So I said it before, I think you can be really proud of what's been funded because you're doing a great job, and we've come a long way in ALS, and can always do better. But yeah.
Just before you be kicked off by Tammy, let me thank you all, because Kathy and I are really proud to work with you 10. There are only 4 here now, but the others also we'd like to thank. And just to tell how we work, because otherwise these guys, they have their own job as well. So besides their own job, they're working as a SAC. So the way that we are working is that if there is any question inside the board of directors or by the PCAC, we'll formalize the question to you. You will have a 1 day to make a brief note, and then it will come back to the board and, of course, to the PCAC. And as soon as everybody agreed upon, we'll send it to the members. So, of course, when you are here, you approach them, but it's not that it's going to be that you can approach them directly, because that's one of the things that we said to each other, that that's the way how we are going to work. But thank you so far, and I think there will be a lot of work in the next year coming up, and we'll have a meeting on Thursday with Kathy, me, and you. So it's a privilege of working with such a worldwide board of Scientific Advisory Council. Thank you.
Thank you.